Unlike the real world, though, there was no pain involved. Fex did a few simple tests first, moving his body around. It felt unnatural to Quinn as he wanted to fight it, and he had the strength to resist it a little. Unlike Erin, who was limited by her regular human strength, it was easy for Fex to force her to do what he wanted. "Calm down, will you?" Fex complained. "For this to work, you need to be in a sleep-like state. That way I can use your body how I like. You just need to pay attention with your mind." Quinn closed his eyes and tried relaxing his body. It took a while for him to allow his whole body to go limp, as he was afraid he would fall over if he did, but suddenly when he did, he felt a jolt in his legs. He didn't fall over, but instead, Fex had taken control of his legs. After getting past the weird feeling, the rest was now easy for Fex. He went ahead and did the same set of punches he did every day while he was training at school. Of course, there was a lot more to martial arts than just learning how to do the moves. It was important to know when to use them, what moves countered what, and so on. But at least it would allow Quinn to progress quicker. Quinn concentrated hard as Fex demonstrated the moves using his body. As his arms flew out from different angles, they were fast and stiff. At the same time, his body was always in a position where he could see an oncoming attack, while being able to block using his shoulder. After the set of punches was demonstrated to Quinn, Fex disconnected the strings and allowed him to practice them. Quinn was feeling fresh, so he didn't want to waste any time and started performing them. Quinn tried to combine the feelings of the punches together with his muscle memory from being controlled by Fex, and it seemed to be working out well for him. Fex watched Quinn carefully as each move was performed nearly perfectly to how they were shown. "Looks like we have a fast learner," Fex said. Although the string method was able to help someone progress faster, it couldn't help them completely. In the end, it was down to the person. With Erin, she too had tried performing the moves nearly instantly, but not once was she successful. But here, it seemed like something had connected Quinn. "Quinn, am I just making my enemy stronger, or am I making a powerful friend in the future?" Fex thought. As Quinn didn't want to let go of this feeling, he continued to practice the punches Fex had taught him. He was slowly perfecting them. Then, all of a sudden, he heard a ding from the system. "Basic Vampire Martial Arts Unlocked Level 1. New tutorial videos available." The usual sound appeared, which indicated that Quinn was able to unlock something from the system. As he practiced the moves, he felt something strange happen. It was as if his body was still being guided by the strings, but it wasn't. The memory was so fresh in his head that his body was moving on its own, and after the last movement, the message had appeared. "Basic arts?" Quinn read. "Does this mean there are stronger vampire martial arts out there? Maybe Fex only taught me the basics on purpose, or maybe he only knows the basics." The second message was what interested Quinn more. The last time he had watched the tutorial videos, they helped him out greatly, teaching him the flash step and the hammer strike. The second tutorial video taught him how to combine moves. This time, the tutorial was unlocked when Quinn had learned the vampire martial arts, so perhaps there was a tutorial skill related to it. He quickly glanced over at Fex and chose not to watch the videos right now. Quinn was playing the complete beginner act when it came to vampire arts. If he was to demonstrate a skill that hadn't been taught, then it would only raise suspicion. "I think I got the basics down," Quinn said. "Is there anything else besides this?" Fex looked at Quinn again, still mesmerized by how quickly he had learned the fighting style. This was something he did day in and out as a child, and amongst others, and even then he was considered a genius. But if he was a genius, then what did that make Quinn, who had learned it in a few hours? Fex thought maybe Quinn already knew the arts and was lying for some reason, but thinking back to their first fight, it seemed impossible. He would have to be a first-class actor to fake punches that bad, and then do the same again while fighting against the teacher Leo. "Yes," Fex replied, "these are only the basics. I can perform at a level above what I showed you, obviously, but I honestly wouldn't be good enough to teach them to you. If you want to learn some more, you're better off getting a real teacher to show you." Part of what Fex had just said was a lie. It was true he most likely couldn't teach Quinn. He tried that once before, and his explanations weren't the best. Still, whatever Fex could do with his own body, he could do, using someone like a puppet. Even slightly better. There was a small fear inside Fex that if he kept teaching Quinn, he had to teach him the advanced vampire martial arts. Looking at Quinn's learning capability, he might defeat Fex easily, and Fex didn't know how to react to that. While the two of them were busy practicing inside the private server, they were unaware of what was happening elsewhere in the game. Zombie Pete winner. So, is it another hacker? This game has been going downhill these days. Someone watching the match had said, but that's his 50th win in a row. Surely the admins would have found out about him by now. I think he has a really good regenerative ability, no? I mean, it's in his name. Well, then how do you explain the extra strength or the crazy speed he has? Doesn't look like he's wearing any beast gear to me. A few people in the crowd were currently watching a particular student play the VR game. Each of them had lost the matches, but found the fights a little strange, so they opted to watch the next few games. But as they watched each game, the same strange thing continued to happen. New match has been found. A new game had started, and once again, the student they had their eye on was going up against a level 3 telekinesis user. The telekinesis user had several black balls attached around his chest, while his opponent had no weapons at all. Standing on the opposite side was Peter. He didn't look like his usual self, as he was slightly disguised by the avatar. Although he selected a pretty basic default design that had a randomly generated face with a few scraps of clothing. The fight had begun. Peter rushed forward. At the same time, the telekinesis user threw out the metallic balls using his ability to speed them up. Peter, however, was fast and was able to dodge most of the incoming attacks, and the few that he couldn't, he knocked away with his hand. However, the opponent was strong, and there were too many metallic balls floating in the air for Peter to dodge. When it came to fighting, Peter wasn't exactly the most skillful person. Eventually, one of the metallic balls came at great speed and managed to hit Peter in the center of his shin, smashing and breaking it in half, causing him to fall to the ground. The others could feel the pain just from watching Peter. Although the game only replicated a small amount of pain back to the user, they could imagine it must have hurt a lot. The telekinesis user calmly walked over to Peter, thinking it was all over. He had taken out one of his opponent's legs, and no movement would mean the end. However, the others watching from the stand knew it wasn't the end for Peter. They had all thought the same thing while fighting against Peter. Suddenly, after a few moments, Peter was able to stand up again, as if the attack had never hit his leg in the first place. He immediately ran towards his opponent. He was caught off guard, and in a panic, tried to fire all the metallic balls right at Peter. But his speed was impressive. Peter dodged the balls, and even though they were now chasing him, he was faster than the balls. Eventually, when he was close enough, Peter pounced on top of his opponent and widely swung his fists towards his head. There was no class and no style with Peter's attacks. It was like one of a wild animal. Winner, Zombie P. Each of the opponents Peter had gone against had witnessed his impressive regenerative abilities. It was that of a high-level ability user. Still, some people were suspicious, since Peter also seemed to have impressive strength and speed on top of his healing powers. As the game had ended just outside the VR pod, Logan was finally waking up from his nap. As he slowly opened his eyes and looked around the room, he noticed that Peter wasn't there. Upon closer inspection of the room, he noticed that the VR pod indicator light was on, showing that someone was currently using the game. "Peter!" Logan said as he rushed over to the computer and immediately logged in. It was as he thought. Peter had not logged into the private server to play, but instead had logged into the military servers. Quickly, Logan brought up a log of Peter's past games, hoping he hadn't done anything to stand out. After watching the highlights of Peter's last game, a slight smile appeared on his face. He, too, was currently witnessing the amazing regenerative abilities that he possessed. While joining the games, Peter hadn't selected any abilities, which meant the VR pod was able to record how Peter's body would react to such things in real life. Just like with Quinn. Because his body was able to perform the vampire abilities, the game allowed him to do it, rather than it being a part of his ability. Right now, the same thing had happened to Peter. "These vampires are more interesting than I thought," Logan said. Still, there was now another problem on Logan's hands. He had already received a few emails from admins. asking to look into the user ID of Zombie P, making sure it wasn't a hacked player, since there had been a few complaints made online. "I guess your fame online will be a short one, Peter. The world cannot learn of you just yet." With that, Logan forcefully disconnected Peter from the online world. However, it was a little too late, as some of Peter's amazing regenerative power videos had already been spread online. Meanwhile, in another military base, a certain group of boys had also managed to watch the videos that had been posted. "Did you see?" Sam asked. "Yeah. Looks like there will be a lot of interesting people at the intermilitary base event," Nate replied with a big smile. Inside the training hall in one of the military bases, Nate and Sam were training. The second-year students had a lot more time compared to the other students. Hence, most of the time, second-year students would use their free time for practical training. They often went to other planets to support the base military in their endeavors. However, as of the moment, the second-year students were to remain at their bases for the time being, under the upcoming interbase military event. It was an event that required all of the 8 military bases to enter. It was a competition among the bases. The events varied from certain activities and games to straight-out fighting. The military bases would compete to see who had raised the best and strongest students. Moreover, the leaders and generals would often be rewarded greatly according to the acquired results. The event was important for the military bases and their leaders, since they would often get more funding and privileges based on the performance shown during their participation. Because of this, the second-year students, who were the main focus of the events, were practicing. This was for the reason that the second-year students often had more time to cultivate their abilities to higher levels. They were able to obtain more beast gear equipment and were more experienced overall. It was very rare for first-years to compete in some of the minor events, as most of the slots for each activity would usually be taken up by a second-year student. Still, there were some cases when a first-year user might be suited for a particular activity. An example of this would be the Hack the Vault Challenge. In this tournament, the team would have to make their way through numerous security devices and Sentinel, successfully making their way to the vault right at the end of the course. This didn't solely require strength, but rather a set of particular skills. The two of them were in the room. Sam was reading a level 6 ability book that was placed on the floor. Meanwhile, Nate observed his companion. Sam had his eyes closed for a while now, meditating. All the while, energy was flowing inside his body. He was trying the techniques that were written down in the book. The power began to rise from the pit of his stomach, but soon after, it became painful. All of a sudden, a burning sensation arose in his chest, promptly stopping him from what he was doing. "Don't push yourself, Sam. This might be your limit," Nate said. Sam looked at his friend's wristwatch, which was now displaying the number 7. Nate had grown so much stronger, and Sam was always behind him, so he wanted to catch up. Sam had done well in increasing his ability from level 4 to 5. He had saved up enough money to buy a level 6 wind ability book. Nevertheless, the problem that he had right now tortured many. Hence, he had reached his limit not long after. Just because one had a high-level ability book, it didn't entail their eligibility to earn it. Usually, humans have varying anatomy, mainly on the aspect that every one of their bodies produces different amounts of MC cells. The burning ache that Sam felt in his heart meant that he had reached his limit. Thus, pushing his body any further could be dangerous. Sam knew what this sensation meant, as it conveyed the state of his body. However, he still wanted to pursue the matter, even supposing that after several attempts, it seemed like his efforts were useless. He had abused the extent of strain that his body could bear, though it wasn't a complete loss, since he could still sell the book to others who would need it. However, optimistic Sam was regarding the issue. Nate could see that his friend was depressed. "Don't worry too much. There are plenty of people out there who are strong even without the use of abilities. Look at that Pure group, for example," Nate said with a cheery tone in his voice, trying to ease Sam's worries. "All we need to do is get you some good beast gear that suits your ability. Also, we can always work on your skills." Sam could tell that Nate was trying to cheer him up, so he didn't want to stay too depressed in front of him for too long. If there was one thing that could make him feel better, it was bringing his friend back down to his level. "So, about that new teacher, it seems like she's been picking on you during classes lately," Sam said, giggling away like a high school girl. Nate's face had gone bright red at this point, as he started to remember the small banter that he and Silver had. "That teacher is bonkers. She already made fun of my head, but she refuses to call me by my name and calls me Blockhead all the time. I even decided to shave the corners of my beautiful hair because of her. I also heard about how one of the other teachers confessed to her. The next day, he came into school with a black eye," Sam replied as he looked at his friend's new haircut. "I always wondered why you purposely matched up to your hair with your face's jawline." "I think this rounded look is a lot better for you," Sam replied. "You mean it?" Nate said as he enthusiastically grabbed Sam's hands. "I haven't seen her today, so maybe she will like this new haircut of mine as well." "You poor soul," Sam said while shaking his head. "You don't even realize you're already in too deep." "I wonder where she is," Nate said, looking around the room. Meanwhile, inside the school's IT room, Silver was currently standing above one of the school's staff members. The reflection from the screen displayed that his eyes had a slight red tint to them, meaning that he was under Silver's control. Right now, she was searching for the school files regarding a student named Fex. So far, there were no results. It was expected, especially since, if she was in Fex's shoes, she would have never used her real name in the human world. Still, she would try it even if there was a slim chance. After searching the military base's school files, she asked the man to check the other military bases one by one, and to her surprise, she did get a hint about his existence. "Oh, you little boy," Silver said out loud. The file was found, and it seemed like Fex had used his real name. The reason why she was unable to find him so far was because he was located at Military Base 2. Although this was good news for her, it wasn't long until the interbase military event, and she would be able to make her move to bring Fex home. "Hopefully you haven't caused too much trouble yet." It appeared like everyone was busy, set on doing their own thing. Because of this, Vorden found the situation a little boring. Before, he would often spend his spare time teaching Peter on how to use the Earth ability. If it wasn't something like that, then Vorden would be racking up his head, trying to figure out how to get out of a tough situation. It was as if he liked to keep his mind busy. If he was left on his own accord, there were only two people who he could talk to, although they seemed to be a bad influence on him. As of the moment, the uninteresting occurrences were transpiring. "Hey, do you think we can trust her?" Rayton shouted as he asked. "We knew something was up, and it looks like we were right, working for Pure. Who knows what she's already told them?" "They could be after Quinn," Syl said while continuing to rock back and forth. "Guys, will you all just calm down?" Vorden hollered, annoyed by his companion's complaints. "Syl, I know you're worried, but if Layla has done something, I think Pure would have done something by now. Yet no harm has come to him." With these words, Syl gradually slowed down the motion he had been doing. This was a sign that Syl was starting to calm down a little. Now, Vorden needed to deal with another person. The more riled up Rayton got, it would affect Syl to a similar level. Vorden's aim was always to keep Syl as calm as possible at any point in time. Syl can remove anyone from the chair if he wished to. Vorden always feared this. Although he wanted the best for Syl, if Syl ever did remain on the chair, what did that mean for both him and Rayton? "What about the next portal outing?" Rayton queried. "What if she plans to make her next move then? We need to find her real goal. Actually, scratch that. No risks. Just off with her we go." "Fine," Vorden replied, giving in to the idea. He knew firsthand that if he didn't do something, Rayton would continue down this path, and eventually he would get Syl worried. "Then I will go talk to Layla." A few moments passed. Vorden could be seen walking around the school aimlessly, searching for all the popular spots where the other students usually hang out at. Regrettably for him, he did not find any trace of Layla in the area. Who does Layla even hang around with? Vorden contemplated on the matter. As he reminisced, he thought of the two students who were the only people that he had seen Layla talk to. They were Quinn and Aaron. Presently, with Aaron gone and Quinn consistently spending his time in the VR pod, it meant that Layla would most likely be in her room. Thus, Vorden went to the dorms to visit Layla. After a few minutes, he landed at his destination. Upon knocking on the door, a female student answered it. That was the first time Vorden had ever seen her. The most prominent feature of the lady was her short black hair, with a fringe that cascaded her face, nearly covering the entirety of her right eye. Her name was Sia, and she was the third person who occupied Aaron and Layla's room. "What do you want, Blondie?" Sia said with an irked tone in her voice, seemingly bothered by Vorden's appearance. "Is Layla there?" Vorden asked. "Are you her boyfriend?" Sia said as she scanned Vorden's body from head to toe. "I'm guessing you two had an argument or something, judging how she's been since yesterday. Or maybe it was the fact that she found out her best friends were... But she's not here." This was the explanation the school had given, that 8 students had been found with connections to the group known as Pure and were taken to the dungeon as a form of punishment. "She's not a..." Vorden mumbled. He didn't know why, yet hearing Aaron's name like that by a stranger who didn't know the truth of the whole situation really annoyed him. "Whatever, man. Look, if you want to find Layla, she's usually by the back of the building, sitting on the bench just underneath the large tree. She and Aaron often went there together." With that piece of information, Vorden left without saying another word. He was mostly polite. However, something about Sia just rubbed him the wrong way. "Oh, pretty boy," Sia shouted. "If you and Layla aren't an item, then feel free to pop a visit in my room any time," she said, winking at him as she closed the door. "Now that's my type," Rayton said. "Shut up," Vorden replied as he went off to the location that Sia had informed him about. The sun had set, and the darkness encompassed the sky. Although it still wasn't very late, usually the sun would set after 7 in the evening. While walking to the location, Vorden felt that it would be strange to be seen anywhere in the area. It might be fine in the middle of the day, but at night was bizarre. As he turned the corner, he indeed saw someone sitting alone on a bench right underneath a tree. Vorden moved in closer. Eventually he reached the spot in front of her. It wasn't until the last moment that Layla lifted her head. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her face was a little swollen. There were signs indicating that she had been crying for most of the night. "Vorden, what do you want?" Layla asked in a rude tone. She had just lost her best friend, and the last person she wanted to see was standing right before her eyes. "I think we need to talk about whether or not I can trust you," Vorden asked. "This again?" Layla moaned. "Here, why should I care if you even trust me or not? Let's put it straight, Vorden. I and you are not friends, and we probably never will be, especially since you keep acting like this all the time. Look, Layla, I need to know. I thought it was fine, but now that I know you're a part of Pure..." "So what?" Layla interrupted Vorden. "I was in Pure this whole time before everything started. The only difference now is that you guys know about it. That hasn't changed who I am, and let me ask you, aren't you going around accusing me all the time? But what about you? Why do you care so much about Quinn?" At this point, Layla had stood up from the bench and was starting to inch closer to Vorden. Accordingly, he continued to step back every time she took a step forward. It wasn't because he was scared of her, but because of the voices in his head. "If she takes one more step closer to us, Vorden, and you don't do anything about it, I swear," Rayton said, his tone a tad threatening. "Shut up!" Vorden shouted as he grabbed his head. "Layla, I need to trust you. If I can't trust you, then I'm afraid of what will happen to you." When Vorden spoke of these words, he wasn't saying them in his usual tone of voice. Layla picked up on this, since he had said it with such sincerity, and that frightened her a little. She knew something was up with Vorden, but wasn't sure what. Perhaps it was a drawback of his powerful ability, she thought. But what was happening to Vorden, and why was he so attached to Quinn? "Then tell me, Vorden, what can I do to prove I'm on your side?" she asked. Fortunately, Vorden had prepared an answer to this question. Hence, as he walked over to her, it was the only thing he could think of. "Let Quinn turn you into a vampire. That way, I know that you're on his side." Layla's anger bubbled at such a question. She wanted to shout and ask the same question. Why couldn't he do it as well? He could get turned too. And yet, despite wanting to ask such a question about why he couldn't do the same, she already knew the answer. It was the loss of Vorden's ability. He was already strong on his own and proved himself to be a good asset to the team. His skills were versatile, which was a great help to them on several occasions. While for her, it didn't mean much. Her powers were quite weak, only being a level 2. She had even bought a level 3 ability book before, hoping to improve her powers, but there was no such luck. She was one of the unfortunate souls who, even with money, wasn't able to increase the strength of her ability. She was stuck at level 2. This was her bottleneck.
"I want to go to Vorden, but it's too risky right now," she replied.
At first, when Layla had met Quinn, she wanted him to turn her. It was her escape from her time at the Pure base. Day in and out, they would constantly show videos and have classes and training related to their goal. Then, when she could finally relax, she took her time reading fantasy stories of the old. Often in the books, it would talk of a vampire sweeping a girl away from all her problems and taking them to a new world, away from everything. After meeting Quinn, this was what had attracted her, but at the same time, she couldn't forget about the reality of why she was at the base in the first place. Her mind kept straying away and reminded her that she needed to stick to the cause. So she had planned to inform Pure of her findings, a way to make their members stronger without using abilities. However, as she grew closer to Quinn, she was afraid of what would happen to him if she revealed Pure about his identity. There was always the chance that Pure wouldn't agree to it. Sometimes the organization's actions even confused her with how they worked and what they deemed okay. In a way, beast weapons they used were just like abilities, with those more powerful than others. Did Pure distribute them equally to their followers? Yet they deemed this okay. But when she saw what happened with Peter, second thoughts were running through her head. If Layla were to do those things, then she didn't know how she would face her family. She wasn't very close to them, but her mother was all she knew, and all she had right now.
"If I go off the radar, stop reporting to Pure, and choose to be by Quinn's side, they could run an investigation. They might think at first that what happened to me was the same as everyone else, but they would quickly find out I'm still fine. They would then look into me, send higher-ups, and then Quinn would be in even more trouble," Layla explained. "When the time is right, I promise I will be by Quinn's side."
Although she had said this, she still wasn't sure herself. When it came between choosing Pure over Quinn right now, she would still choose Pure, where her family was, and now Aaron as well. After hearing her explanation, it seemed Layla had made a lot of sense. She could be lying about the whole thing, but Vorden didn't know how Pure worked. Right now, everything was fine, so he wouldn't want to stir the pot anymore.
"It's not just about Pure," Vorden replied. "You're too weak to help, and it seems like you will cause more problems for us in the future than help. At least you might be of some use to us if you're turned."
These last words Vorden spoke were the biggest hit to Layla. She knew this. Her whole life she felt like this, even within the Pure organization. She wasn't any help to her mother, she wasn't any help to her friends, and she couldn't even help much when her friend needed her.
"Vorden, can I ask?" she shouted and focused her thoughts elsewhere. "How did you know I was here?"
This area she was in right now was a place where she and Aaron would often hang out. Nobody came around that place oftenly, so she was surprised when Vorden found her. "Your roommate told me," Vorden shouted back as he walked away.
"Roommate, Sia? How would she know? I'm surprised she paid attention to me and Aaron. She was always off doing her own thing. Maybe that is sweeter than she looks."
The next day had arrived, and it had now been a couple of days since the whole event with True Dream was over and done with. The school no longer searched for the missing students. After doing a sweep of the school, it looked like none of the students had seen Peter or Aaron. In the end, they deemed that the video that had been sent must have been true, and they were too late. Things were starting to get back to normal. With this, Logan had made preparations for today. It was the day the student named P.O. Blank would return. With the help of Leo, they were able to gain access to the portal room once again. The security surrounding the place wasn't on high alert now, and being a sergeant, Leo had privileges to use the room as he wished. Sometimes the sergeants would visit other planets to brush up their skills in hunting beasts on the portals, or maybe even visit a few family and friends. Leo was able to sneak Peter into the room, and with him, several of Logan's mechanical little spiders. After that, Leo left the room, and it was all down to Peter. "You ready?" Logan asked. Everything had been prepared beforehand. The wristwatch had been altered to indicate the pulse of a living person, along with the level 4 ability, and Logan had also made a few adjustments in the other rooms that he still hadn't informed the others about. With Logan's ability and the use of his spiders, he didn't personally have to be anywhere to make adjustments. Logan was able to freely control the metallic spiders however he wished. Using his computer, he was also able to monitor and hear everything that was going on in those rooms. If the spiders were ever spotted, they had a certain pattern on them that made them just look like any other spider. From time to time, people would attempt to splatter them, but Logan would try his best to scurry them away before that happened. At the moment, even Peter's clothing had looked roughed up to indicate he was either traveling through the desert or even going from shelter to shelter at the time until he had found his way back. With everything set and done, Logan pressed a key on his keyboard. At the same time, in a different location, in the school's security office, a signal was detected. "There has been a signal activated from one of the portals," a man said. "Send word to anyone nearby immediately." It didn't take long for the two guards by the door to enter the portal room and find Pio. Haley soon came along with Faye to check who had made the signal. The main reason why the generals were called was just in case it was a beast that had managed to enter through the portals. "That's one of the missing students!" Faye shouted as soon as she saw Peter. She had recognized him since she had dealt with their case files. She had looked at the 5 students who had supposedly died that day over and over again. "Quick! Haley takes him to the medical facility. We need to give him a full health checkup. This is the first bit of good news we have had in quite a while." Right inside Logan's room, Quinn and the entire group were standing with a smile, which soon turned into one of horror as they heard those words. "Hey, when have I ever messed up?" Logan complained. "It's pretty obvious that as soon as they find a student who has been missing for a while and comes back in tattered clothes from a planet that had suffered a Dalki attack, the first thing they would do is take him to the medical facility." It was something the others hadn't thought about. They had all been too busy and focused on their problems. They didn't think this through. All they could do right now was believe in Logan's words and trust him to have a good escape plan. As they took Peter to the medical facility, Haley went ahead and ran a general check on Peter's condition. There wasn't much she needed to do, as technology had come quite a way, and she noticed he didn't have any physical wounds on his body. This meant there was no need for her to personally use her ability to heal anything externally. She hooked Peter up to a large, tube-like machine, while also placing several little of what appeared to be white stickers all over his body. The machine would show his internals and display his insides, as well as see if there was something wrong with any of his organs, including his heart. It further looked into the details of his blood pressure and all sorts of vitals. And everything could be done with the single use of the machine. This was where Logan's ability had come to its advantage. Logan was able to fake a sickness and enter the medical facility beforehand. During this time, he had touched every machine available there. While doing so, he had taken control of the machines, making them feel alive. He could now give them commands, and they would follow them whenever he wanted to. The others sat there nervously, as Haley would continue to jot down information on her little tablet now and then. She would look at the screen and then go back to her tablet. "It looks like you're in perfect condition," Haley said as Peter lifted him outside of the machine. "Now I just need to ask you a few questions." Once again, the others got a little worried, but as she asked him questions, Peter had answered everything perfectly. Hearing this, Logan nodded his head proudly, but the others weren't too sure. The problem was, Peter had answered them all too perfectly, answering almost immediately and in a robot-like voice. Haley continued with her questions, while a soldier stood by her side, noting down everything. She had even asked about what had happened to him before this point. Logan had come up with a backstory that was plausible according to the situation. It detailed how the Dalki had attacked their group, and he had run away, luckily escaping the fiasco. The only problem was that all his equipment had been left behind, and he had no clue where he was. He traveled through the desert for many days, managing to feed himself using the survival skills the school had taught him, eventually reaching a shelter. The problem was, it was the wrong shelter. The shelter only had teleporters that linked to other planets, and none back to Earth or the military base, but he found out the shelter he had come from wasn't too far. He stayed until he regained his strength and purchased a map, leading him to the original shelter, and eventually returned to the military base. Once the questioning was over, Haley left Peter to be with the soldier, guarding him as he rested, while she went off to report to Nathan. "So, how is the boy?" Nathan asked. "Thankfully, he seems to be in perfect condition health-wise, but—" Haley hesitated. "But what?" Nathan replied.
It seems like his mind isn't all there. Sometimes his response was quite rigid, and there seemed to be a lack of emotion. Pio didn't have any of these signs before. Although this could be due to the trauma of being attacked by the Dalki, perhaps he will come around in the future.
That's great news, Nathan said. As long as the student is fine, it'll be okay. We can inform his parents about the good news for now. They don't need to know about the rest until later. There is no use worrying them over nothing, if he is to return to normal soon. Have him rejoin classes tomorrow.
But sir,
Haley complained,
don't you think it's too soon to send him out again? He just came back.
You might be right about that. Inform the student and let him decide. If he wishes to go, then let him.
As you wish, sir,
Haley said before returning.
As Haley left the room, Nathan went to pick up the files on his desk. As he read through them one by one, he felt like pulling his hair out. His thought process often clashed with the military's current way. But this time, he thought it was too much.
An orange portal outing? What are they thinking? Nathan said. It seemed like Peter's disguise had worked, and they had bought Logan's plan. Quinn didn't quite know how he did it, but he knew it was something only he could do. With the tension now gone, it did seem like their group finally had no more problems to deal with. There was still the matter with Duke, but now with Peter gone, there was no direction. They would just have to wait for him to make his next move against Vorden and slip up somewhere. It was late that night, and the others had left the room to go to sleep. Just before they left the room, Fex had spotted something on Logan's workbench. It was a square-shaped portable teleporter. While the others were busy saying their goodbyes while friendly chatting with each other, Fex decided to move closer to have a look. The workbench wasn't your usual type of workbench. There were several tools designed there just for Logan's use. There were even several computer screens just above the workbench. Right now, it looked like he had the square teleport device hooked up via some cables leading upward to the computer screen. On the screen above was a random list of numbers, spanning long rows and rows of different sequences of numbers. The machine was going through different sequences at an alarming rate, and each time, the number would blink red and go on to the next sequence. He can't be trying to crack the thing, can he? I thought these things were meant to be unbreakable. But Fex wasn't so naive. Perhaps the vampires thought the devices were pretty secure, but after witnessing what Logan was able to do time and time again, he thought maybe there was a chance Logan would be able to crack the code. This is bad, Fex thought. The square portable teleporters were different from the round ones the Earthlings used. They were a lot more advanced. The circular teleporters were set to go one destination only, while the square ones worked more like a teleport station. An access code needed to be put in, and depending on which access code was used, it would teleport you to the correct station. This was how Fex was able to arrive on Earth, through a similar type of teleporter. The problem was that there were two types of square teleporters, with each slightly different in design. On the top where the code was to be entered, it could either be green or red. Green meant it can be used to travel to any teleport station. This included the ones on other planets, not just Earth. The one inside Logan's room had a red panel on top. Similar to the circle portals, they had one destination and one destination only. It was back to the place where Fex had come from. He had realized this before, but thought nothing much of it, because without the access code, Logan would never be able to use the teleporter. But looking at the screen, Fex didn't know when, but soon, he would have access to the teleporter. As everyone headed back to their rooms, Fex managed to pull Quinn to the side just before they were about to part ways. After all, Fex and Quinn's rooms were on the opposite ends of the hall. Just a little warning to you, Quinn. The device that Logan has been tinkering around with on his workbench, it's a portal leading back home. Before he discovers the access code and its destination, you need to do everything you can to stop him. Otherwise, the two of us will be discovered, and we will be in big trouble. Fex left after warning Quinn before he could even ask any questions. What was that all about? Quinn murmured. He then decided to carefully think about what Fex had said. The device on his workbench was the teleportation device that had been created by Richard Eno. Quinn knew of this fact only thanks to the system's inspection skill, and then later had informed Logan. By home, there could only be one place Fex was talking about. It was where the vampires came from. Still unsure whether or not that was somewhere on Earth or another planet, but most likely from the hints given out so far, it seemed like somewhere along the way. Between when the system's creator was a vampire and the vampires now, they had moved from the Earth and relocated to another planet, or at least a place hidden from the human eye. He understood that he needed to stop Logan before he figured it out. The only thing Quinn didn't understand was why Fex seemed so concerned. If Logan was to travel through the portal, why would he get in trouble? Quinn then thought of his first meeting with Fex. He mentioned something along the lines that he wasn't meant to be here. Is that the reason why Fex hadn't acted against Quinn? If he was to be found out then, he would be in trouble as well. And based on what he said just now, he had confirmed it. If this was all true, then Quinn didn't need to worry about Fex. If what you are thinking is along those lines, then I'm afraid the situation is worse, the system said. Based on the boy's young age and at the same time, his great skill, it would be wise to assume he holds a high position in one of the vampire families. If he is not here on orders, then they will send others on his trail to retrieve him. We need to be careful. All of this meant one thing. It was another reminder for Quinn to get stronger, quickly. The next day, the first-year students were called into the assembly hall for a meeting once again. It was a little bit of a surprise, but they assumed it either had something to do with the next portal outing that was to be held this weekend, or the intermilitary base event in a couple of weeks. As Vorden lined up next to Quinn, the two of them looked around the room and eventually spotted Peter. Peter had been asked whether he wanted a break before joining the school again. They even asked him if he wanted to take part in the next outing. They had expected him to say no, but to their surprise, Peter had insisted to be taken on board, claiming that he wanted to gain more experience as soon as possible to prevent such a thing from happening to him again. The real reason, though, was because Quinn had asked him to. It was important for Quinn to keep Peter as close as possible to him. While Vorden was looking around the room, his eyes had managed to catch the female student, Sia. She was standing right by Layla, which was expected since the two of them were roommates. Vorden thought about the girl's strange words, and just then their eyes met. Sia noticed this and blew over a kiss towards Vorden. Seeing this, Vorden quickly turned away. "What is wrong with that girl? No class at all. Nothing like Aaron," Vorden quietly complained. "You prefer that lame ice girl to her? What is wrong with you?" Rayton said. Nathan walked onto the stage. It was the first time many of the first-year students had seen him. Usually, a general would hardly ever talk to the students, unless it was something important. This made the students fidget and slightly worry. "Okay, I'm not one for speeches, so let's get to the point," Nathan said. "The portal outing on the weekend. I'm here to tell you all that it won't be like usual. This year the military has decided to expand their operation and get more aggressive in planetary explorations," Nathan explained. "So, what does that mean for you guys? Well, instead of the normal green portal, you guys get to jump ahead and explore an orange portal instead." Hearing the news, the students suddenly broke into gossip. "An orange portal this soon? I thought they only did that with the second years. What if we run into high-level beasts? Why would they do this to us, especially after the Dalki attack?" "Silence!" Nathan shouted as he slammed his fist down onto the podium. Nathan rarely got angry, but he knew he had to calm down the crowd before it got out of control. The other factor was that he didn't think this was the right decision. It was too early for them, and they could seriously hurt themselves, but his boss Paul had ordered it, and he had to follow. "Don't worry, there will be 2 sergeants sent out with you on this journey. Leo, head of the beast weapon class, and Faye are 2 of our strongest generals, so even if you do run into high-level beasts, they will help you. I will now let Faye explain how the portal outing will work for all of you." Faye then took over and walked to the podium. By the time she had arrived, Nathan had already left the hall. He had already done everything he needed to do. "An orange portal outing is different from the green portal outing you did before. The green outing is focused on competition between each group, but the orange outings focus on working together. Each class will travel together in groups of 50. The main goal is exploration. Portal planets have yet to be fully explored. Each class will head in a different direction, but we shall remain close to each other. You will remain in your teams of 5 while traveling in the larger group of 50. Each team will be given a certain device that would be used to survey the land and map out the terrain. The data recorded will be used to automatically create a world map and other maps for future use on the planet. More details will be explained. once the devices have been given to you. It will also go into depth about how points will be distributed per team. For those of you who lost members on the last trip and a few new faces, please fill in those groups lacking members. If all teams are filled, please come to me. I will randomly assign you to a group. Please do this now, Faye commanded. The hall of students quickly shifted around, with everyone getting into the same groups they were in before. Quinn, Vorden, and Layla remained in one group. Technically, Peter and Aaron had left their group, so there were 2 spaces left vacant. Peter, now known as Pio, had decided to come over to join Quinn's group. This had been the plan all along. "So what do we do about the 5th person?" Vorden inquired. As Quinn looked around the room, he noticed once again that Fex was all on his own. During his time at school, he hadn't spent time with anyone else other than Quinn and the others, and due to the low level indicated on his watch, the other teams that were taking in people avoided eye contact with him. Seeing this, Quinn shouted, "Fex, come join us over here." Others thought Quinn's move wasn't right this time. They were sure that Fex was hiding something, but at the same time they weren't surprised. Recently, Quinn and Fex had been hanging out with each other more often, so an occurrence as such was expected. "Perhaps this is an instance of keeping your friends close, but your enemies closer," Vorden said as quietly as possible. Right now, he was standing next to Layla. Thus, he had said those words loud enough just for her to hear, even slightly leaning his body towards her ear. As Layla looked up, she could see Vorden staring down at her. After meeting his gaze, she knew that the comment was being directed at her. There was the urge inside her to retaliate and say something back, but after their last conversation, she just felt defeated. All of a sudden, Fex came rushing over towards the others. The group didn't know what to say. They hadn't attempted to make a conversation with him because they were afraid they might say something that would give Quinn away. After all, they were aware of the awkward situation he was in, so they would just allow Quinn to deal with it. "I guess you guys realized how lame your group is," Fex said, his tone indicating that he was proud of himself. "So you immediately needed me to boost it up a level. Well, if you insist." Upon hearing that, an awkward smile made its way to Quinn's face. He merely wanted to be close to Fex, hoping he would eventually learn more about the vampire world. After what happened on the last portal outing, he became incredibly worried. Although Quinn had gotten stronger, he still wasn't strong enough to deal with the weakest of the Dalki. Also, he couldn't imagine how powerful the vampires, who were coming after Fex, would be. Accordingly, one thing was simple. He needed to get strong faster. There were only 2 days left before the next portal outing. As he thought about ways to boost his strength, there were a few things that came to his mind. One, he still hadn't studied the new tutorial videos that had been unlocked after learning the vampire martial arts. Adding more variety to his attack skills would always come in handy. Another way for Quinn to get stronger was to obtain more skill points. There were several shadow skills he had yet to unlock. However, to get stat points, he needed to level up his current shadow abilities. And the final way to get stronger was to increase his stats. He could level up, but the amount of EXP required for the next level up would increase significantly. By just playing the game, he wouldn't be able to get a measly dent in it. He could go around challenging random people. Nevertheless, while the others thought he was a level 1 and with the school on alert, that wouldn't be on the list of his best ideas. Still, there was another way that he could utilize to increase his stats and strength. It was unique to him, and that was by obtaining the blood of as many different people as possible. When Quinn saw how useful Fex's charm ability was, he felt like there might be a way for him to quickly do this. However, when he had tried this method on a few students as he passed the halls, it was unsuccessful for the most part. To the few that they were successful on, Quinn could only remove their memory, yet was unable to command them to move. This meant that it wasn't much use unless he could find a student that would fit the criteria of the skill. If he wanted to go through with this plan, he would need more stat points in his charm skill, which just led him back to the original problem. Are there any other ways to get blood? As Quinn thought about this, the image of the city hospital suddenly popped into his head again. Still, he would have a problem with the cameras. For now, he would just have to focus on upgrading his shadow abilities, along with learning the tutorial videos. While everyone was huddled up in their groups, there seemed to be 3 stray students that had walked up to the front of the assembly hall, going straight to stand by Faye's side. As she looked into the crowd of people, she started to look at each of the groups. Every single one of them was already filled with 5 people. "You over there," Faye said, pointing to one student and then to the next from another group. "You there, and you." She surveyed the room one more time, and her eye had managed to capture Vorden, who was just at the back. Faye had seen his face on documents more times than she would have liked, so she decided to let his group with the remaining student. "And you can head to those at the back," she said. The others were too preoccupied with their conversations, busy talking about what they might expect to find in an orange portal planet. Vorden was the one with the most knowledge in the group, and he was saying how it varied from place to place. The orange portal was amidst 2 stages. Once the whole planet had been explored, they would use the information that they had gathered to update its status to green or red. Although it was usually a task that would take a few months to accomplish, it was unlikely they would be able to get much done. Just then a voice echoed loudly within the hall. "Hello?" Sia said as she entered the circle. She then turned her head towards Vorden and started to wave her hand in front of the young man's face. "You!" Vorden replied, shocked that he saw Sia. "What are you doing here? Look, I'm not interested." "Well, that's a shame, but it looks like you're stuck with me," Sia replied. She then glanced at Layla and gave her a wave too. Meanwhile, Quinn became curious about what was happening, so he decided to inquire, "What do you mean?" "Sergeant Faye has asked me to join your team. You see, the team I was in before, well, it turns out that 3 of them were part of Pure, so the 2 of us had no other groups to go to. That is the reason why Faye told me to go with you guys," Sia explained. This was unexpected and a little bit annoying, Quinn thought, as he prevented his emotion from showing. Right now, everyone in their team knew of each other's abilities. However, Sia knew nothing. She didn't know that Layla was part of Pure, Quinn and Fex were vampires, and Peter's identity. If she was to join the team, it would only slow them down. Sia then looked at each of the members. "So I'm already acquainted with the hottie and puppy eyes over there," she said, referring to both Vorden and Layla. "But what about the rest of you?" She gave them an intense stare, and it seemed like they were a very strange bunch for the young lady. Then she pointed at each one of them as she continued to provide them with nicknames. "Average Joe over there," pointing to Quinn. "Dead Eyes," pointing to Peter. And, when she got to Fex, she paused slightly. As of the moment, he had turned on his charm and was trying to draw her in as much as possible. First impressions were always important to him, and he wanted to make a good one. "Go on, then," Fex said. "Compliment me on my good looks." "Arrogant young master type," she said. This surprised Fex greatly. Although his charm might not have completely persuaded her, it should have had some effect, though it seemed there was none. Sia looked defeated and appeared like she didn't want to be in the group at all, not realizing that they felt the same way, especially after her words. "Well, we better get to introducing everyone then. If we have to work as a team, I guess the first thing we need to know is about everyone's abilities, right?" Sia asked. When the question asking about their abilities arose, everyone in the circle was a bit hesitant to answer. After all, it was an awkward question due to it being quite personal. It was as if you were revealing your weakness to another person. However, at the same time, it should be a given to know your teammates' abilities. Although the main problem was that the school still didn't know about Quinn's ability. As for Peter, they assumed that he still had his duplication ability, the one that he most recently copied from someone else. "I don't have an ability," Quinn quickly answered, all the while he lifted up his wristwatch to show Sia that he was a level 1. After seeing this, she quickly ignored him and moved on to the next person. Quinn was fine with this, since this expedition would be quite different. The whole class would be traveling together for the Orange Portal expedition. Thus, he would have to hide his abilities from the rest of the class. Hiding them from one more person wouldn't hurt. "I already know Layla's, and most people learned about that pretty boy after the event with the second years in the assembly hall. That means I just need to know yours," Sia said as she looked at Peter. Peter then gave Sia a rather uncordial glance, since he wasn't in a great mood. What annoyed him wasn't Sia's attitude towards him, but her disregard for Quinn, his master.
I can show you firsthand if you want, Peter said, raising his fist. Peter! Quinn snapped. So Peter immediately put his fist down and went back to his master's side. What the hell was that all about? Sia asked in bewilderment. She knew her teasing could piss off some people at times. Hence, because of this, she was usually quite cold at gauging people's snapping points and when to stop. Still, Peter's outburst seemed a little abrupt to her. Don't you think you should tell us your ability first before asking for ours? Vorden questioned. Well, my ability will be a little hard to explain, so why don't I just show you? Sia looked at all the people in the group. At first, she would have tried using her ability against Peter. However, judging by how he acted, she didn't want to do that now. Out of all the people in the group, there seemed to be one target that stood out as the weakest. As Sia lifted her hand, smoke gradually appeared on top of her palms. The smoke was colored in the shade of blue that the skies had. It started to form a certain shape. Its body was similarly hued to the smoke. After a brief window, a pointed blade emerged on one end of the fully formed thin rod. The final product was a short spear, spanning half of Sia's height, made of animate smoke. Without warning, she looked towards her target and threw the spear. It flew through the air and managed to hit Quinn dead in the chest. The spear had permeated his body, a part of it protruding on his back. The others couldn't believe that Quinn had just been attacked, right in front of their eyes. "Quinn!" Layla shouted. "Are you okay?" When the spear had made contact with Quinn, he felt no pain. Although he could feel the object piercing him, it didn't seem to have inflicted any physical damage. No bruises, scratches, or holes where blood could trickle. Still, there was definitely an effect. Part of his energy felt like it was being absorbed by the weapon. It was a similar feeling to when he was out in the sun, only a lot weaker. Finally, the notification sound was heard. Ding! You have been affected by Spirit Spear. All stats have been reduced by 10%. The sensation that Quinn had was confirmed by the system message. Peter was outraged. He had a strong urge to lash out at Sia, but suddenly he could feel an intense amount of pressure burning the side of his body. It was Quinn.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.